if you feel you want to defer this and do some more discussion, investigation, thinking, whatever. Again, it's not like something has to be decided here tonight, or money is invested. Councillor Black,
Well, I would like to try the recommendation as a motion.
go ahead.
There's a seconder.
So your motion is the recommendation in staff report 1806 is written. I have a mover for the recommendation that's in front of you on page 7. Do I have a seconder? Seconder? No, there's no motion then at the moment on the floor. Anything further? Councillor Columbus and then Oliver.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as what Councillor Brunton mentioned, I too, and you're aware of some of these institutions that have inquired about this process. They're interested. He mentioned an RFP. I will move that we defer this for a 2-week period. Would that be suitable? Or maybe a month if it's not in any hurry.
Would you like 2 weeks, 4 weeks?
I think we've got a big meeting coming up in 2 weeks, so how about 4 weeks?
So your motion is to defer this report and topic until 4 weeks hence.
Yes.
Do I have a seconder for that? Columbus has moved and Councillor Black has seconded. That report, FS 1806, Legacy Fund, be deferred for 1 month for further consideration. Debatable deferral? Trying to think.
Deferral is only debatable upon the nature of the deferral, not the overall issue.
Okay, not the overall issue. The nature is for 4 months. Sorry, 4 weeks, 1 month. Told you I needed a break. Any discussion on this? Again, on the nature of it and not details. Yes, Councillor Height?
Just so I'm clear, Mr. Mayor, in a month from now, we're going to discuss this absolutely same report with
Well, this
no
report
new
would-
information? What's the point?
Well, we certainly got a lot of information tonight that wasn't on this report.
But there won't be new information coming from staff? Not according to this motion, correct?
That's correct. Okay, it's good clarification. Any other discussion on the recommendation? Hearing none, those in favor? 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? That is carried. So 1 month we will bring this topic back to the table. That is carried. Yes, you may.
We make sure we get a copy of the slide deck from the CIBC presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we have one investment here, and we'll keep that as well. I know it's getting close to public meeting time. About a 15-minute break, and at 10 after, we'll start back with our public meeting. Thank you. Now, leave this one.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. take a tour on a peaceful country road. I'm bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it
What
home,
do we got here? We got Black and Brunton. Welcome back, everyone. We have a quorum. I'd like to get started with our public meeting. We're a few minutes late. I apologize for that, but we'll move things along as quickly as we can. Council, if you want to turn to page 87 of your agenda, and we'll get on with our public meeting portion. I now officially open the public meetings. They are held under the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. I advise everyone in attendance that the Ontario Municipal Board or local planning tribunal has the power under the Planning Act to dismiss an appeal to either a zoning bylaw amendment or an official plan amendment. If the appellant does not make oral submissions at this public meeting, or does not make written submission to Norfolk County Council before the zoning bylaw is passed and/or before the official plan amendment is adopted. On page 87, Council, is staff report FS 1807. Just a reminder, if you have one of these gadgets and it's going to ring on us, if you just silence it, that would assist us. Thank you. This is staff report FS 1807. It's recommendations for cancellation, reduction or refunding of taxes under section 357, 358, and 359 of the Municipal Act. Our treasurer, Mr. Johnson, if you would give us your report first, and away we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a routine report that we do several times a year. Basically, if you have a property and you change the valuation of your property through either a demolition of part of your property, or you no longer are commercial activity, or there's a various different avenues of your assessment being changed, you would fill out an application to get your assessment changed, and then the county would then refund that portion of your taxes. There is a schedule of the adjustments that we have made, and if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
I appreciate that. Is there any person in attendance impacted by the recommendations of this report? I'll get to council in a second. Impacted by the recommendations of this report that would like to address council, and if so, you raise your hand, we'll have you come forward. Boy, everybody's happy with their taxes. Gee, that's made my day. Anything from council, questions or comments? And the list is on page 91 and 92, which totals $148,271. Councillor Black, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, and through you to our treasurer. Just want to get this straight. It looks like the major amount of reduction is because of Norfolk County itself, and that some of our properties have been reassessed. So we benefit on the reassessment, but not on having to pay the extra amount. So it sort of balances it out. Could you just explain that to me, because I'm a little bit confused? It's on page 92, you know, where it's 170066 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 of them in a row there. So what's that all about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Black, that totals approximately $62,000 in tax adjustments, and that is a result of some properties that the rate budget, actually, it falls under the water and wastewater budget, and it was assessed at commercial. And the tax department did an application, and we managed to get that assessed as exempt because we do own it. So the rate budget saved that amount of taxes, because what we would do, because it's related to the rate budget, it would be a transfer of those taxes to the tax budget. So the tax budget loses, but the rate payers gain.
Okay, so if any of the water and sewer users are listening tonight, they've got a benefit.
Any other questions for staff? I hear none. I will need a mover and seconder to close this public meeting. Columbus has moved. Geisens has seconded that we close the public meeting. Those in favor? This public meeting is closed. There is a recommendation for council on page 87. Gentlemen, your wishes. Councillor Height, please.
Move the recommendation.
Councillor Oliver? Thank you, gentlemen. That report 1807, recommendations for cancellation, reduction, or refunding of taxes under sections 357, 8, and 9 of the Municipal Act 2001 be received, and that council approve the cancellation, reduction, or refunding of taxes as outlined in the report. Discussion. Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. One down and many to go. I'm on page 93, staff report, DCS 18-31. An application has been received to amend the official plan designation of the subject lands from hazard land to urban residential, and to amend the zoning of the subject lands from hazard lands to urban residential type 1. This is to facilitate the construction of a single detached dwelling. Diane Smith and agent Albert E. Smelko have put forth the application affecting the lands described as Prospect Street, part of Lot 11, Concession 2, in the urban area of Port Dover. Alicia Call, how are you? Are you ready? We are. Take it away. Thank you.
This is an application that will permit the construction of a single detached dwelling. The general footprint is shown on the screen on the left side if you are interested. The lands are zoned and designated hazard lands currently and proposed to be changed to urban residential in the official plan and R1A in the zoning bylaw. No public input was received for this application. A slope stability report was submitted with this application, and it outlined the buildable area, so that is what is proposed to be rezoned. The rest is to remain as hazard lands. This application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the official plan, and it represents good land use planning. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Is there any questions for our planner, Mrs. Call, on the application? Not at this time. I would like to ask if the applicant, Diane Smith, or Agent Smelko are in attendance. Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application to come forward to the podium. And as always, we allow the applicant or the agent, should they wish to speak, to go first. Do you wish to come and speak? Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone in attendance this evening who wishes to speak in opposition or in general to this application? Yes, please come forward. We'll turn the mic on. Thank you, Councillor Height. And give us your name and address, please. We appreciate that.
Hi, my name's Heather Easton. My husband Richard is here as well. We live at 108 Prospect Street.
108?
108.
Thank you.
Yeah, which is one of the properties directly across from the proposed land. So a couple questions, I guess, to start was, prior to this proposed sign notice going up, there was a notice going up about tree clearing happening that had something to do with tree conservation. Although it does, and I didn't call about it because it looked like that was something official to do with just the preservation of the wetlands area. But then when this notice came up, and it looked like the way they cleared it was, in fact, to build a home and had nothing to do with preserving the wetlands there. So that just seems a little, not untrue, but a little sort of devious in the planning, I think, to then put this forward and say that's what we're doing, because it sort of negates what the previous posting was, I believe. And also, as of right now on our way here, the notice that is up on that property has no reflection of this date of this meeting. So nobody, other than those in whatever the area is that people get letters, which of course I did because I'm right across the street, but no one else in the area is aware of this meeting as far as I know. I didn't see it in one of the paper, or in the papers. I'm not sure if it was posted, but it certainly isn't posted at the public sign. So I just think that actually hasn't allowed for people to be able to come forward necessarily. Not that it matters, but I know lots of our neighbors are away because it's just that time of year when people go south, so they're not necessarily here to be able to speak. So my concern really is just, it is hazard land. We bought our home almost 8 years ago, being told also that there would be no development across the road from us because it is hazard land and under the wetlands in Long Point, which almost our entire property is to the back of our yard. And it's just kind of, where does it stop? They say right now they want to build one home, but where does that stop really? I mean, it shows the property that they own in total, which is quite large compared to where they're saying they're going to build now. So what's to prevent them to keep building along that whole area, sort of going all the way down the hill on Prospect? It just kind of is feeling that this is just the beginning of a slippery slope to building much more there. I mean, it's showing this land that they want to develop on the span of all 4 or 5 homes that are right across the street. So that's quite a large area. So just, you know, as a direct neighbor from there, I'm just concerned with what does that actually mean for the future? In my 8 years, I've gone now from having a full farm behind me that's going to become a little city with egg ink going in there. There's now a pot farm, a grow-op on our street that makes our street smell like pot. Maybe they're going to do that on this property. So no way am I okay with that. And then now further down Prospect at the Lynn Valley Trail, there's another subdivision going down. It just really is becoming a mass development area, which is really not at all certainly what I thought I was buying into in that location. And right across from us, I am concerned about what that one building means. What does that mean really if they're changing the zoning for this one thing? Where does it end? Because their property is quite big. I just don't feel that this change for zoning will only amount to one home. So that's where I'm at today.
Okay, I took 3 questions from
Yeah.
you, and we'll see if we can get an answer.
Yeah.
Before I go to planning, your question on where does it stop?
Yeah.
I get that, and I guess my response to that, although planning may want to add, is basically that people that own vacant property or parcels like this have the right to apply
Yeah.
for for this, an application such as this for rezoning.
Yeah.
And this is the process whereby council decides whether it's appropriate or not. So
Yes.
you know where it stops, I guess. For a simple answer, it
Right.
would be up to this council.
Right.
And we look at each case on its own merits. And I don't know if that's the answer you want, but that is the process. Alicia, the first question was to do with the tree. Our speaker talked about conservation sign up first. Do you know anything about how that lot was cleared, treed, or whatever? We have pictures of it here, so.
Yeah.
Yes. Could you respond?
Sure, so that was cleared, I think it might have said the Forest Conservation Bylaw, which the title can sometimes be misleading. So there was a permit applied for through the Forestry Department to clear those lands, so that's what that sign would have been for.
So our forestry supervisor would have given that permission, correct?
That's right, and there are details about this on page 94 in the package.
I don't want to pursue it any further. What's going through my mind is, if they would have been given that permit, I think they would have been given that permit to do the cutting, whether there was going to be a rezoning application or not. I can't speak to that, but I would think that's pretty accurate. They're sort of somewhat related and unrelated. I don't know. I won't get into that, but I would think they would get that even if the property wasn't going to be developed.
Yeah, no, and like I said, to me, as someone who lives there, it looks, upon reflection back on it, that was done sort of in a deceitful way, that like the real
I hear you.
end goal of that was in fact to build. And yeah, I mean, that's why I didn't bother calling about the original sign, because I thought, okay, it looked awful for a week seeing them go in there and like ripping down trees, because that's just happening all around me, but I didn't say anything then. And then when we see the posting go up for this, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what that was, and that wasn't truthful. It didn't seem
I hear you.
truthful anyway.
I hear you. Yeah, you're good questions.
Yeah.
The second one you had was in relationship to a notice on the posted yellow sign of the date of this meeting for
There's
the
nothing.
public hearing. Alicia?
So usually when we post those signs, or through the mayor, when we post the sign, we don't usually have a public meeting date yet, so we post what is required in the Planning Act, that there will be a public meeting with our contact information, so everyone is circulated in the area, like 120 meters with when the date will be. And then for the sign, it has our contact information, so if someone is interested in attending, they can call us.
But on that, then I question why you don't put the date on there, because certainly I've been to a few of these meetings for this division that's being built behind my house, the signage was changed to say the dates of the meeting. So again, I question why isn't that put up there? It's not giving all the information to the people that are just walking by. I'm sure, as you know, there could be 20 more people that would want to come, but that maybe don't. I mean, you need to see that information there. That's why the sign's there. Just saying TBC that's not good enough. That's why it's supposed to be in the paper, the date, and it's supposed to be announced, correct?
Through the mayor, it's not required to be in the newspaper. Yeah, but again, they can call if someone is interested.
Anything further?
No, I just think that like the not posting it, I just think that just seems shady and just sort of a cheap way to try to get something to pass by without having people come. It does seem strange to me that, say, I'd be the only person of all of us there that would say anything. I think that not being posted is certainly a reflection of not having people, and again, the timing of the year. A lot of our neighbors are away. Not that matters, but like I said, people
Yes.
that generally do speak up, say about the subdivision behind us and things happening around, is a concern. So that's...
Thank you.
I'm
Any
not in
questions
favor.
from council to this young lady? I thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance this evening that wishes to speak in opposition or in general to this application?
Thank you, Your Worship. Keith Milner, 91A, Prospect Street, Port Dover. My question is basically this. These were hazard lands before. We're now looking at making it zoned residential. Is it possible to see the geotech survey of the lands to ensure that that's been concluded? And what is the position of LPRCA? The reason I ask, there's a hazard line I particularly don't care if there's a home built there. I mean, it's aesthetically, I think it would be okay, no problem. I just want to make sure, I mean, I went to put in a swimming pool in my backyard, and that little nasty thing called the hazard line came up, and I was told I had to get a geotech survey, and then I would have to go through the dog and pony show of the LPRCA, who may or may not pass, you know, and make it okay for me to put a swimming pool in. So at the risk of $12,000, I just said, forget it. I'm not going to risk $12,000 and have some people decide that it's not appropriate. I would just like to know what has changed to take this from hazard land to residential, seeing as when you go back on that property, it's a sheer drop, and I mean substantial, to a next tier, and then another drop down to what used to be our beloved Silver Lake. So I would just like to see or be afforded the opportunity to view the study by an accredited geotech engineer and the thoughts and comments of the LPRCA. Is that possible?
Yeah, Keith, the engineer, the geotech engineering report is included in the document. It's public. She's from LVM.
I haven't seen that. I
Engineering,
apologize.
but it would be. Ladies, you want us to also add where Keith could access this?
Through the mayor, it is on the website, the council agenda website, but if you could connect with me directly, I don't know, did you get a notice with my contact information?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what changed between hazard land and now?
So what changed was just that they did the study that shows where the stable slope allowance is, and then the setback from that that's required. So that's why it's just this small piece at the front that could be rezoned. So the engineer's report indicated that area was not hazard land. And regarding Long Point's position, they are supportive of this application.
All right.
But they will need a permit to build from Long Point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Keith? Thanks, Keith. Is there anyone else in attendance who wishes to speak in general or in opposition to this application?
I could just say something in general.
Just a second. Just give me a moment here.
Pardon me?
Anyone else? Just give me a second. You'll get your turn to respond if you wish, sir. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition or general? Ron, you want to come forward? In general, you may.
I'm familiar with the property. I'm also
Yeah,
familiar.
Mr. Smelko, you, by our procedure, will get a chance to respond to any comments made here. You will get, prior to council, you will get the last word, sir, okay? I maybe didn't make that clear. I'm just going through the procedure. Yes, Ron, go ahead, please, and I have another speaker over here next.
I'm familiar with the property. I'm familiar with the grades. I'm also familiar with the hazard line mapping, and it's my opinion that Conservation Authority and the hazard line mapping has been overreaching throughout the county. There's all kinds of property in this county that could be utilized for building sites, especially when you're in an urban boundary. And when you see a property like this, if the hazard land boundaries were actually drawn properly, these people wouldn't have had to gone through all the expense of the studies. It's land at the same grade as Prospect Street, Mill Road. There's plenty of room to build 1, 2, or maybe 3 houses. So whenever there's an opportunity to have economic development in Norfolk County, gain some tax base, contribute towards jobs and so on, I say let it happen. And it would have been a lot better if the hazard land boundary mapping had been correct in the first place. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Good evening. Andrea Milner.
Just pull her right down. We want to
Is
hear
that
you.
better?
Perfect.
Okay. 91A Prospect Street in Port Dover, Keith's wife. My only question is, and I'm only because Keith didn't mention it and it popped into my mind, when was the engineering study done on that land?
The one in my packet is July the 13th, 29th, 2013.
2013. So it was done well before any of the trees were removed and before any of the deadfall that has been falling in the past 5 years has taken place. Is that correct? So there hasn't been a recent engineering study done.
Through the mayor, there was an additional letter submitted May 1st, 2017 that confirmed that the findings were still accurate.
Okay, so that was still before
Yes.
most of the trees were removed. And there hasn't been an engineering inspection since the trees, and the reason I'm asking this is because I trespassed. I walked the property since the tree, I walked it when the trees were there. Those were a lot of large trees. They had large roots. I walked it then, the ground was firm. I've recently walked it even with the frost in the ground. That ground is soft. Just as a reassurance, would it not be possible to have an engineer inspection of that land? Because even with the frost, you can walk on it and it's spongy. My fear is that a foundation or heavy equipment going into that property is going to damage it. I talked to the gentleman who was driving the truck that was picking up the trees that were harvested, the stumps that were being placed on the truck. He would not drive his truck into the property because it was soft. He kept it right at the approach to the property. When I asked him that, I asked him why he did that. He was a gentleman, I believe, from Tillsonburg. He was worried about sinking down, particularly when he had a load on. A foundation of a house would be just as heavy as a truck loaded with tree stumps. That's all I have to say.
Okay, any other questions? Any questions? Council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else in attendance who wishes to speak in opposition or in general? Mr. Smelko, as the agent, you may come back and address any concerns that were raised, sir.
Well, first of all, no trees were removed in the area that is we're seeking to be changed to residential. That's the first thing. That area has been cleared for years, as I understand. And the engineering report of May 2017, again, it stresses very clearly that the engineer made the early report, checked all the land, and he indicates there's been no change. With respect to the trees, a lot of the trees that were removed were ash, and they were trees that were damaged. And it was recommended that those trees be removed. The people that own the property, they're happy with the property that they have in terms of it being hazard land. They're content with that. There's no intention to develop the balance of the property. They're happy with what they have. What they want is on that very sliver of land that has been proposed, that sliver of land is well away from the base of the first slope, and it certainly is well away from the second slope. The study is very clear. The conditions of any construction that we've heard from the planning people, obviously there has to be a considerable distance from the slope so it doesn't affect the slope. All of that has been taken care of and will be taken care of. And the thing that I find rather interesting is when you just turn your eyes to the east, there is a house that is built in hazard land, the Hagen property. That is in hazard land. We're not going to be, the construction that is going to take place on this land is going to be well away from the slope and will not be on hazard land. So I mean, softness of course, your ground is going to be soft at this time of year. The frost is leaving the ground. That's normal.
Any questions from council members? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? No? I would like a motion to move, to close the public meeting. Councillor Height has moved. Councillor Brunton has seconded that we now close this public meeting. Those in favor? That is carried. I'm looking for direction how to deal with this application from council. Councillor Geisens.
Going to move the recommendation on page 93.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Brunton? Moved by Geisens, seconded by Brunton, that the application of Diane Smith, 151 Prospect Street in Port Dover, this affects the lands of Part Lot 11, Concession 2, Urban Area, Port Dover, Norfolk County, to amend the Norfolk County Official Plan and the Norfolk County Zoning Bylaw 1Z 2014. The file number is before you, gentlemen, that this be approved for reasons as set out in report DCS 1831. Public input has been received for this application and therefore is considered as part of this decision. Discussion on the motion on the floor. Councillor Oliver.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I'm certainly going to support this recommendation, but I think just for reassurance for a couple of the neighbors in particular, I think the reason why the area that is being recommended to be rezoned is so small and so oddly shaped is that that is the only portion of the entire property that was deemed to be sufficiently away from the slope and in conformity with the setback lines that the LPRCA dictates. And we as county and we as council rely on them, and I do have some history with them, as some people know. We rely on them to have the technical expertise or to require property owners to bring in their own technical expertise, which is what has happened here. And I think we do have to rely on those experts in a situation like this. So I think the neighbors can be assured that there are no other portions of this large several acre parcel that are outside of the hazard land.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you very much. I move on now to page 142 of our agenda. This is Staff Report DCS 18-38. This concerns cannabis production and processing policy update. Good evening, Mr. Vaughn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Are you ready to present, 1838?
I am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Council met in early January to discuss some issues that we were having in regards to odor in the agricultural area, and it related to several cannabis production facilities. And on January 9th, Council directed planning staff through options D and F of the report attached as Appendix 1 to develop a policy in response to both Part 1 and Part 2 cannabis production facilities in Norfolk County. On February the 16th, the County Cannabis Task Force met to discuss the policy options and to develop a bylaw that would see a new definition for cannabis production and also set some parameters for buffering from these types of facilities in relation to sensitive land uses. And then on February the 21st, we held a public information session that was held in Simcoe at Talbot Gardens. And at that session, we did hear quite a few concerns in regards to some of the existing facilities that we're aware of. And then on February the 26th, planning staff met with our building department and also legal staff to discuss the bylaw, the proposed bylaw that's in front of you today, and also to discuss enforcement and how enforcement with this particular use would work. At that meeting, it was resolved that our existing definition for medical marijuana production facility gives us the ability to enforce ahead of this bylaw some of the difficulties that we've been having with odor and the cause of odor from these facilities. And it boils down to us being able to use our existing definition to go out and enforce non-compliance and non-conformity issues that are already happening. The definition and new policy in front of you today is really just tightening up an existing policy that we have in our zoning bylaw and suggesting some additional buffers in addition to what we have today. Just as a reminder to council in regards to the different types of facilities that exist under the ACMPR, which is the federal regulation for medicinal and non-medicinal, well, soon to be non-medicinal marijuana. Part 1 facilities are what we consider to be licensed or commercial facilities. These are the types of facilities, an example of this would be what like Marican is on the west side of the county. They are very highly regulated. They are inspected by Health Canada. They have a lot of security. They have odor control. They have light control. They go under our site plan control, so they are regulated by the county quite rigorously as well. And then there's our Part 2 facilities. And the Part 2 facilities deal more with the registration and individual grow or designated grows. The idea of the Part 2 facility is to enable individuals or someone who's designated by that individual to grow their medicinal marijuana for them. And that was as a result of a court hearing in 2016 and thus the creation of the ACMPR. The main difference between these two types of facilities is really how they're regulated, how they're inspected, and how they mitigate their odor. So Part 1, like I said, there's quite a bit of odor mitigation, and Part 2 really doesn't require any odor mitigation. And these are the facilities that we're experiencing the issues with presently in the county. So the report and draft bylaw in front of council today is suggesting some changes to our existing definition and also to some of the provisions related to that definition. So the first one is that we're going to be changing the name Medical Marijuana Production Facility, which really is what was defined in the former regulation, the MMPR. So that is now changing to Cannabis Production and Processing. And the idea there is just to clarify and ensure that we're covering all of the bases. This is covering both Part 1 and Part 2 type production. I will say this does not cover, contemplate or cover or regulate the anticipated 4 plants per individual that is slated to be legalized in the summer of 2018. We've also defined what cannabis is. We've removed cannabis production and processing from the farm definition, and we've defined a new term that is called air treatment control, and this relates more to the provision and regulation of air quality coming from these facilities and the inclusion of some kind of air quality control measure for them. In addition, we're looking at having cannabis production and processing, the general provisions be amended as well. So the first one is we're proposing to increase the buffer in the industrial zone from 70 meters to 150 meters. And this is where the separation of a facility and sensitive land use. This is an instance where we have an MG zone, so an industrial zone beside an industrial zone, a facilities being proposed in an industrial zone, but on an adjacent property, even though it's zoned industrial, there's a residential use there. So the idea there is to provide adequate separation between those two uses. The second amendment is to require a larger buffer, so 300 meters for a cannabis production and processing facility, or use, I should say, because it's not just limited to a facility, it's also for outdoor growing as well, because that is something that we will see in the future. So 300 meters, and that's for facilities that do not use air treatment control, and that's just limited in the agricultural zone. The next one is if air treatment control is used, the buffer of 150 meters will continue to be required. This is something we have in our bylaw today, so I'm just clarifying that there's no change there. And the last one is that cannabis production processing sites are subject to site plan control. This again is something we have in our plan today. We're just making it explicit that that will be applicable to all forms of cannabis production. some of the next steps that we're planning on doing as staff to help tighten up some of these new policies is that we're looking at developing a county-wide odor control bylaw. We're hoping, or we will be taking a report with a revised civic address bylaw, and that'll come before council April 10th. And should, and this is a big if, but should the provincial sale and distribution laws change, planning staff will be researching and develop a zoning bylaw option for council's consideration. Currently in Ontario, it's going to be controlled by the government and by the LCBO, but in the event that that changes, which it may in the coming months with the provincial election, we want to keep that in as an option. And last but not least, bylaw enforcement. So right now, we are dealing with some of the odor issues on a complaint basis, and we're in the process now of following up with some of the complaints that we've received, and we'll be enforcing for non-compliance or non-conformity. And this is something moving forward that we see happening as well. We'll be moving forward with the new definition and the new policies on a complaint basis. We won't be seeking to do any policing, but simply just on a complaint basis. And the idea there is to just solve the odor problem that's in the county. So recommendations then are that to receive this report and draft bylaws information, that the bylaw, we are recommending that it be approved. We're looking for some direction from council to research and prepare an odor control bylaw. In the event that the sale and distribution does change, just to leave that as an option for us to look at creating a bylaw to regulate the retail sale. And lastly, that we have received quite a bit of public input in regards to this report and to this bylaw. The majority of the input that we have received has been in favor of this bylaw. We have received one written letter just in opposition to it, but the majority of the input we have received has been very favorable for it. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn, for that presentation. I'll first ask council if they have questions of staff, and I'll start with Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions here. The existing operations that have been out there for 2, 3, 4 years, legal or not, I guess, are they will they be grandfathered by Health Canada? Will they be able to stay in place and continue operating under the old system if we pass these recommendations?
Through the mayor, the existing facilities that are there today, from my understanding, may or may not comply with our existing definition. It'll be an individual site-by-site basis that we evaluate whether or not they are legal non-conforming. They would have, obviously their establishment, the timing of their establishment would be critical to that assessment. So it's hard to say whether or not some of the existing facilities would be legal non-conforming. We'd have to look at it on a site-by-site basis.
Okay, thank you. And how do you measure odor? Does any other municipality do that at the current time? I take it you're looking at manure odors and all kinds of odors.
So just to give a reference of odor and a comparison of some of the different types of facilities and uses that we have existing in the community today. So I'll use our existing licensed facility on the west side of the county. If you stand outside of that facility, they have quite a bit of filtration, air quality control. If you're standing outside of that facility, there's no smell. If you stand outside of one of these other facilities, there is quite a large smell. Odor is something that's hard to regulate. It's hard to pinpoint exactly how much odor is being emanated, but the fact that you can smell it suggests that they probably don't have any odor control measures there. That, for the time being, will be how we determine whether or not it complies with our bylaw and whether or not they have odor control. In the future, like I said earlier, we're going to be looking at developing an odor control bylaw.